I had just moved into this house in the city. It was a big change, but maybe that was exactly what I needed. After everything that happened with Jameson, it felt like the house was wiping away every trace of my past. The rooms, the walls, the air itself, everything was new. I'd left behind the old apartment, with its creaky floors and faded wallpaper, in search of something fresh, something that could help me start over. A few boxes still lay scattered around the living room, but that was okay. They would find their place in time. 5 years had passed since Jameson left, and it still felt like a rough time, one I hadn't fully recovered from. It wasn't that I wasn't trying, I just hadn't figured out how to let go completely. The days blurred together, and I lost track of how much time had passed. The months turned into years, and now here I was, in a new house, trying to push the past behind me. It wasn't easy, but I had to do it. The house wasn't massive, but it was enough. I'd always wanted a place with high ceilings, lots of windows, and the space to breathe. But moving in didn't feel as exciting as I thought it would. It was like being in an unfamiliar dream. I was here, but I was still waiting to wake up from the fog that clung to my mind. Of course, nothing about the new house was easy. The electricity kept cutting in and out, the lights flickered sporadically, and sometimes the power just shut off altogether. I tried fixing it, but I wasn't exactly handy when it came to electrical work. I had no idea what I was doing, and standing there in the dark, feeling completely alone, was not something I was used to. I'd never felt this isolated since those old days, back when everything was still fresh and uncertain. Then there was Nathaniel. I hadn't seen him in years, but he'd always been a good kid, raised by his mom, always willing to help out. I wasn't sure when I'd need him, but as the power problems became more frequent, I found myself texting him. "Nate, the electricity's acting up again. Can you come take a look? I can't figure this out on my own." His reply was quick and simple, just like him. "On my way. Don't worry, I'll be there soon." That's the thing about Nathaniel, no matter how much time had passed, he still felt like a comforting presence. Seeing him again after all these years made my heart skip a beat, though I didn't know why. He was still the same Nathaniel, but also different. He wasn't the young man I remembered. The boyish charm was gone, replaced by something more mature, grounded. When he walked in, I was surprised by how familiar, yet foreign he seemed. He was grown now, a man in every sense of the word, and I had changed too more than I cared to admit. "You still having trouble with the lights?" he asked, his eyes scanning the room. I nodded. I didn't know what to expect when I called him, but now that he was here, everything felt strangely different. There was a new air about us, something charged, though I couldn't quite place it. Nathaniel moved around the house like he had every right to be there. He seemed so sure of himself, inspecting the electrical panel with focused attention. I watched him for a moment, trying not to be too obvious, but there was something magnetic about the way he moved, the way he concentrated on every little detail. "These wires are loose," he said, adjusting his shirt as he knelt by the panel. "Let me take care of it for you." I stepped closer, offering him a small smile to show my appreciation. As he worked, I couldn't help but notice the way he looked. His gaze lingered for just a moment on my outfit, nothing too revealing, just a simple dress and a cardigan, but still it made me aware of how I'd been dressing lately. I'd started wearing more comfortable clothes things that made me feel good about myself after everything with Jameson. I wasn't neglecting myself, and that was important. It had become part of my healing routine. Nathaniel's eyes briefly drifted over the hem of my dress before he refocused on his task. I felt a small shift in the air, like there was something unspoken between us. I brushed it aside, telling myself I was overthinking things. He was just here to fix the electrical issue, that's all. But even after he moved to check the fridge, my thoughts kept drifting back to that strange feeling. His presence felt heavier somehow. It was like everything had changed, even though nothing had really happened. When he finished fixing the electrical issue and stood up, there was an awkward silence between us. "All done," he said, wiping his hands on his pants. "Everything should be good now." "Thank you so much," I replied, trying to hide the odd sense of unease I felt. It was a mix of gratitude and something else, something I couldn't quite put into words. He gave me a quick smile and turned to leave. "I'll head out then. Glad I could help." I watched him walk to the door, my mind racing. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure if it was just me or if he felt it too. He paused at the door for a moment, and I thought I saw something in his eyes, something unspoken, a brief flicker that I couldn't catch. "Take care," he said, and then he was gone. I stood there in the silence, trying to process the emotions swirling inside me. It felt like I'd stepped into a new chapter of my life, but now that the door had closed, I realized I had no idea what came next. The next few days went by quickly. It was like the world had shifted again. But this time, it wasn't because of the new house or the power outages. It was because of Nathaniel. I couldn't stop thinking about his smile, the way his hands had worked on the electrical panel so effortlessly, the brief moments of eye contact that seemed charged with something I couldn't name. It was unsettling and exciting at the same time. It wasn't just the electricity that was off. My mind was a mess, constantly circling back to the same thoughts. Why was I still thinking about him? Why hadn't I been able to shake the feeling that something had changed between us? It had been years since we'd last seen each other, and before that, our relationship had been strictly platonic. So why did everything feel so different now? I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on unpacking the rest of my boxes, but every time I reached for something in one of them, my mind would wander back to Nathaniel. I kept telling myself it was just a momentary thing, a passing curiosity. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. By the time the weekend rolled around, I was restless. I hadn't texted Nathaniel again after that day. Part of me wanted to reach out just to see if he felt the same, but another part of me was hesitant. What if it was all in my head? What if I was reading too much into something that wasn't there? Then, late on a Saturday afternoon, I received a message from him. "Hey, I was thinking about you. I know it's been a while, but would you want to grab a coffee sometime? I'd love to catch up." It was simple and casual. No big declarations, no heavy subtext, but I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief wash over me. It was like he'd been thinking about me too. I didn't waste any time. I replied almost immediately. "That sounds great. How about tomorrow afternoon? There's that cafe downtown I like. We could meet there." His response came quickly. "Perfect. I'll see you at 2. 2 it is." The rest of the evening felt like it dragged on, each minute lasting an eternity. I couldn't focus on anything. My thoughts were consumed with the meeting, with the idea of sitting down with Nathaniel again, seeing how things had changed between us. Would it be awkward? Would we fall into old habits, chatting like we used to? Or would there be something new in the air? Sunday afternoon arrived, and I found myself standing in front of my mirror, adjusting my outfit for the 3rd time. I wanted to look casual but put together, not too eager but still comfortable. Eventually, I settled on a simple blouse and jeans, nothing flashy. I wasn't trying to impress him, but I didn't want to look like I didn't care either. The cafe was cozy, warm with the scent of freshly brewed coffee. It was bustling with activity when I arrived, but I spotted Nathaniel almost immediately. He was sitting at a table by the window, his back to the light, and he looked just as relaxed as I had imagined. His hair was a little longer now, a little tousled, and his jacket looked stylish, yet unpretentious. I took a deep breath before walking over to his table. When he saw me, he stood up, a wide smile spreading across his face. It was a smile that felt familiar, but there was something deeper in it, something I hadn't seen before. "Hey," he said, his voice warm. "You look great. I am glad you could make it." "Of course," I replied, trying to sound calm, even though my heart was racing. "Thanks for inviting me." We sat down, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I could tell that both of us were adjusting to this new dynamic between us. It wasn't just a simple catch-up anymore. There was an energy in the air, a quiet undercurrent that neither of us seemed ready to address. He picked up his coffee and took a sip before speaking. "I've been meaning to reach out to you for a while now. After everything with the house and the power, I realized it's been too long since we last talked. How have you been?" I thought about it for a moment. How had I been? Honestly, I'd been struggling, trying to piece together the fragments of my life after everything with Jameson. But I didn't want to get too deep into that right now. "I've been okay. You know, adjusting to the new place, trying to get everything in order. It's a bit overwhelming, honestly." Nathaniel nodded, his expression understanding. "I can imagine. Moving is always such a pain, but I think it's good for you. A fresh start." "Yeah," I agreed. "I hope so. It's just it feels like everything is still kind of in limbo, like I am waiting for something to fall into place." He leaned in a little, his gaze steady and thoughtful. "I get that. It's hard to shake off the past. I know it's been years, but I've seen you go through a lot. It's good to see you trying to find peace, even if it's a slow process." His words lingered in the air for a moment. I hadn't expected such openness from him. We had never been that deep before, and yet here we were, speaking to each other like we'd known each other our whole life. For a brief second, I wondered if he felt the same strange shift I did. Was it just me, or was there a new understanding between us? A connection that hadn't been there before? Before I could fully process the thought, Nathaniel changed the subject. "So tell me more about your new place. What's it like living there? Any neighbours you've met yet?" I laughed, relieved by the change in topic. "I've met a few, but mostly it's quiet. I think everyone keeps to themselves, which is fine with me. Honestly, I haven't even explored the whole neighbourhood yet. It feels so new, like I am still learning where everything is." He smiled. "I bet you'll get the hang of it soon enough." As we continued chatting, I found myself feeling more at ease. The conversation flowed naturally, just like it used to, but now there was an undeniable tension between us, a pull that I couldn't explain. By the time the afternoon was drawing to a close, I realised I hadn't once checked the time. I'd been so absorbed in the conversation, in Nathaniel, that I didn't want it to end. It felt like we were two people who had been apart for far too long, reconnecting in a way that felt right, but also unfamiliar. "Do you want to do this again sometime?" Nathaniel asked as we stood up, his expression soft but hopeful. I nodded, my heart skipping a beat. "Yeah, I'd like that." And as I walked away from the cafe, the feeling that had been lingering for days only grew stronger. Something was changing, something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but I knew it was inevitable. Whatever it was just beginning.